So, look down at your hands for a second.
Yeah, just really take a look at them.
Right, and maybe feel the chair beneath you. You feel completely solid, don't you? Like you're navigating the world as a single, unified person. You look in the mirror, point, and say, well, there it is. That's me.
It's an incredibly comforting assumption, It feels permanent. We really rely on this belief that there is a core, unchanging architect inside our heads, just sort of pulling all the levers of our life.
But what if that you're sitting there doesn't actually exist as a solid entity? What if this ancient philosophy from over 2 millennia ago could logically prove that you are not a single building, but, a rapidly shifting landscape?
That is exactly what we're getting into today.
Yeah, today we are taking a deep dive into a radical deconstruction of human experience. We are pulling from Bhikkhu Sujato's translations of the Samyutta Nikaya, or the Linked Discourses, which is a foundational text of early Buddhism.
And our mission today is to really explore how this text dismantles that everyday illusion of a solid self. It breaks experience down into fundamental components and honestly shows us how to wash away the stubborn habits of our own egos.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand how to let go of the self, we first have to understand what we are actually made of.
Right, because the Buddha proposed that if you take a conscious life and slice it apart, you won't actually find a permanent soul.
You find 5 distinct dynamic processes firing in rapid succession instead.
Yes, the khandhas, or aggregates.
Let's ground this in a real-world example to see how these 5 processes actually work. Imagine you are sitting at your kitchen table eating an apple. It feels like one solid event being done by one solid person.
Right, but if we slow that moment down to like a microscopic level, the ancient texts reveal a completely different reality. The first process firing is form, or rupa.
And this is just the physical stuff, right?
Exactly. This is the raw physical hardware of the universe. In your example, form encompasses the physical mass of the apple, the physical structure of your mouth, the saliva, even the light bouncing off the apple's skin.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. It is made up of the 4 primary properties: earth, which is solidity, water, or liquidity; fire, which is heat; and air, or gaseousness.
But physical form is really only the surface, right? Because the moment that apple actually touches your tongue, another process instantly flares up.
Yeah, that brings in the second aggregate, which is feeling, or vedana. And in this specific context, feeling doesn't mean complex emotions like jealousy or grief.
Right, it's not a mood.
Exactly. It refers strictly to the immediate, visceral, hedonic tone of an experience. The literal millisecond there is sensory contact. There is a flash of feeling that is either pleasant, painful, or just completely neutral.
So it's just that raw gut level, I like this, I don't like this, or I don't care. The initial burst of sweetness from the apple triggers a pleasant hedonic tone before I've even formed a conscious thought about it.
Which triggers the third process, perception, or sanya. This is your mind's cognitive faculty of recognition and labeling.
Like the categorizing engine of the brain.
You got it. It takes that raw sensory data and the pleasant feeling, accesses your memory, and just slaps a conceptual label on it. It says, crisp, sweet, red, apple.
My brain is essentially sorting the raw data into recognizable folders. But the cascade doesn't stop there. Once my brain labels the apple as sweet and crisp, the 4th aggregate kicks in. And this one seems, well, incredibly consequential.
Oh, it is. It's called choices, or sakasara. And this is the active driver of your behavior.
Like our willpower.
Exactly. Choices, or volition, represent your ethically potent intentions. It's your will. In the Buddhist framework, these intentions are the engine of karma.
Okay, wait. Karma. How does that mechanically fit into eating an apple?
Well, think of karma mechanically as creating deep habitual grooves in your psyche. Every time you make an active choice based on a perception.
Whether that choice is taking another bite of the apple or lashing out in anger or acting with generosity.
Right. You are digging a neurological and psychological groove. That groove conditions how you will react tomorrow, and in this worldview, shapes future lifetimes.
So the urge to chew, the decision to swallow, the intention to reach for another slice, all of that falls under choices.
Yes, all of it.
Yeah.
And underlying all of this, illuminating the entire scene, is the 5th aggregate.
Consciousness, or vinyala.
Exactly. But this isn't some magical free-floating soul. It is the raw, subjective process of awareness itself. The texts are very specific, splitting consciousness into 6 classes based on the sensory doors.
Right, so there's eye consciousness for seeing, ear consciousness for hearing, tongue consciousness for tasting.
And even mind consciousness for being aware of thoughts. It arises dependently. You only have tongue consciousness of the apple because the physical tongue and the physical apple interacted.
When you lay it all out like that, it completely shatters the illusion of the moment.
It really does.
I mean, there is no central eater eating an apple. There is just physical form making contact, a flash of pleasant feeling, a cognitive label of apple, a willful choice to chew, and the raw awareness that tasting is happening.
5 distinct processes firing so fast they just blur together into the illusion of a single me. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, none of these 5 things is a permanent you. They are just temporary events.
But here's the thing. If these 5 aggregates are just neutral, natural processes, just form, feeling, perception, choices, and consciousness doing their thing, why do they cause us so much profound suffering?
That is the big question.
Why is human life so often characterized by stress and anxiety? The source material offers a massive clue here because it doesn't just refer to them as the 5 aggregates. It calls them the grasping aggregates.
The Panchupadanakanda. This shifts the entire paradigm. They aren't just passive components sitting on a shelf.
Right.
The texts use a brilliant physical metaphor, comparing the 5 aggregates to the 5 fingers of a hand. And the defining function of a hand is to perform the active work of grasping.
The detail that really stuck out to me in the text is the specific role of consciousness here. Because consciousness is described as the thumb.
Yeah, consider the mechanics of your hand. The thumb stands in opposition to the other 4 fingers. It acts as the anchor.
Right. It coordinates with them.
Exactly. It coordinates with the index, middle, ring, and pinky to make a fist. Without the thumb, a hand cannot effectively grip anything.
Wow. So in the exact same way, consciousness coordinates with your body, your feelings, your perceptions, and your choices to grip onto existence.
Precisely. These aggregates are the active, functional machinery of attachment. They are literally what allow us to cling so tightly to our lives.
So we aren't just holding on to our bodies and our feelings. Our bodies and feelings are the hand doing the holding. That completely flips the script on how we view our own minds. It's this self-perpetuating cycle of clinging. There's another vivid image from the Samyutta Nikaya that illustrates a tragic result of this gripping. The text compares an unawakened person, someone who deeply identifies with these aggregates, to a dog tied to a post with a leash.
It's an image that really resonates with the repetitive nature of human stress. If a dog is tied to a sturdy pillar, what happens?
Oh, the dog runs.
Right, it might sprint in wide circles, it might change directions, it might sit down panting for a moment, but it is fundamentally tethered. It just goes around and around the exact same pillar.
It expends an immense amount of energy, but never actually gets anywhere new. In this metaphor, the post is the 5 grasping aggregates.
Exactly.
Because we look at our body, our fleeting feelings, and our transient thoughts, and we say, this is mine, I am this, we are basically tying our own leash to that post.
We run in circles from experience to experience, tethered by our own grasping. We chase a pleasant feeling, run away from a painful one, build a whole identity out of our career or our looks, and we just keep circling the post.
So the inevitable question this raises for a practitioner is, how do we cut the leash?
We have to realize the post isn't what we thought it was. In the famous Anattaloka Sutta, the discourse on the characteristic of not-self, the Buddha provides a rigorous logical proof for why none of these 5 categories can actually be considered a true self.
The argument pivots on 2 profound observations about our reality: lack of control and impermanence.
Right.
But hold on, I have to push back here, because this is where the philosophy meets major resistance in daily life for me.
I completely understand, yeah.
When I sit here, I feel like I'm entirely in control. I mean, I can choose to raise my hand right now. I can choose to take a deep breath. Doesn't that localized autonomy prove there is a sovereign me in the driver's seat?
Well, the illusion of control is very persuasive in the short term. But the text provides a devastating counter-argument regarding ultimate control.
How so?
It proposes that if your physical form were truly your absolute self, it would not lead to sickness or affliction. If you were truly the sovereign ruler of your aggregates, you would be able to simply dictate terms to them.
Like issuing a royal decree.
Exactly. You could say, may my body be exactly like this forever. May my body never age.
Ooh. The realization of that hits hard. I can't command my cells to start mutating. I can't command my immune system to never catch a virus.
Because you will eventually age, get sick, and die entirely, despite your deepest wishes, you are not truly in control of this physical form. It belongs to nature, not to you.
And I assume the same applies to the mind.
Absolutely. You can't issue a command saying, may my mind never feel sadness again. May my mind never experience anxiety. The feelings arise anyway. based on conditions. The lack of sovereignty proves they are not your absolute self.
Which leads directly into the second part of the proof, impermanence. All 5 aggregates are inherently unstable. The cells in my body are dying and being replaced constantly.
My feelings fluctuate wildly from morning to night.
And my thoughts are just a constant, chaotic stream.
Right. And this brings us to the actual mechanism of suffering, or dukkha. The universe is fluid. It is constantly changing. But the human mind, fueled by these grasping aggregates, is desperate for a solid handhold.
We demand that our health, our relationships, our youth, and our happiness stay exactly the same forever. We project permanence onto a fluid reality.
So the suffering is the friction.
The friction generated when our rigid demands collide with a changing universe.
Yes, that is the literal engine of human stress. Building your sense of identity on the 5 aggregates is like building a house on a foundation that is actively crumbling beneath you every single second.
You are guaranteed to experience anxiety because the foundation cannot hold.
Therefore, the Buddha concludes, it is logically and experientially unfit to look at any part of our physical or mental makeup and declare, this is mine, I am this is myself. The post the dog is tied to is just an illusion.
The logic is airtight. But let's be totally honest, intellectual logic is rarely enough to rewire how we fundamentally operate.
Oh, definitely not.
I can agree with the mechanics of the Anattala Sutta, but I still go through my day feeling like a very real, very solid person. We need a way to viscerally unlearn our identification with these processes.
And the texts offer a striking solution for this in the Phattapama Sutta, or the Discourse on the Lump of Foam.
Right.
Rather than just offering abstract logic, the Buddha provided poetic visual similes for each of the 5 aggregates. He compared them to phenomena that are hollow, vacuous, and completely insubstantial, specifically designed to shift how the practitioner perceives their own existence.
The imagery is incredible. Let's break down how the text describes each one, starting with form. The text says physical form is like a lump of foam floating down the river Ganges.
Which is such a great visual.
Right. From a distance, a massive clump of foam looks like a solid, substantial white boulder. But the second you reach out and squeeze it, it collapses into nothing. It's mostly empty air.
And that is our physical body. It looks solid in the mirror, but at a microscopic level, it's mostly empty space and fleeting chemical reactions.
Yes, exactly. Moving to feeling, the text compares our hedonic reactions to a water bubble forming in a puddle during a heavy downpour.
A raindrop hits the puddle, bubble forms, exists for a fraction of a second, and instantly pops.
That captures the exact nature of every flash of pleasure we desperately chase, and every flash of pain we frantically run away from. They arise due to conditions and vanish almost instantly.
Now the third is perception, and this simile is brilliant. It compares our cognitive labeling to a shimmering mirage in the midday summer heat.
Think about the psychology of a mirage. An exhausted traveler in the desert sees heat waves bending the light, and their thirsty brain projects an oasis onto dry dirt.
Our perceptions do the exact same thing. Our brains take fleeting sensory data and trick us into seeing solid, permanent things where they're only shifting processes. We get tricked by our own survival mechanisms.
And the fourth one is choices, or volition. I actually love this analogy. Choices are like the trunk of a wild banana tree.
Oh yeah, that is a good one.
If you've ever tried to chop down a banana tree, you know there's no solid wood inside. You peel away layer after layer looking for a core, and eventually you're left holding absolutely nothing. That's exactly what our willpower and intentions are like.
We assume there is a solid chooser inside us making decisions, but when you investigate it, you just find layers of conditioned habits and external influences with no solid core inside.
Finally, we arrive at consciousness, the raw awareness itself. The text compares it to a magician's illusion performed at a busy crossroads.
The magician conjures up a captivating show. The audience is mesmerized by the sleight of hand, believing the illusion is real. But there is no actual substance to the magic.
The sheer cumulative power of these metaphors is how they change our internal reactions. Usually when we realize our ego is causing us trouble, our instinct is to go to war with ourselves. We try to aggressively crush our own ego.
What's fascinating here is how these similes shift your perspective. They reveal the futility of that aggression. You don't put on boxing gloves to fight a mirage.
Right.
You don't try to wrestle a lump of foam into submission. You simply see through it. Once you recognize the magician's trick for what it actually is, you stop being mesmerized by it. The power the illusion holds over you simply evaporates.
The theory is beautiful, but we have to ground this in daily life, because I can hear these similes, and I can completely agree that I am a lump of foam in a shimmering mirage.
Right, in a quiet room, it makes perfect sense.
But when someone aggressively cuts me off in traffic on a Tuesday morning, I still get furiously angry. I still experience a massive spike of adrenaline, and I absolutely feel like a solid self whose territory was just violated. It is incredibly frustrating to understand the philosophy but still fail the emotional test.
That frustration is a universal part of the process, and the early Buddhist texts address it with incredible realism. Realizing that the aggregates are not self isn't a software update where you simply download the logic and instantly become enlightened.
I wish it were.
Don't we all? But it is a grueling process of gradual emotional purification. And the perfect illustration of this is found in the Khemaka Sutta.
This might be the most relatable story in the entire collection. Set the scene for us with Khemaka.
So Khemaka was a venerable monk staying at the Jujube Tree Monastery. He was gravely ill, in immense physical pain. A group of senior monks sent a messenger to interrogate him about his spiritual realization, specifically asking if he still regarded the five aggregates as his self.
And Khemaka sent word back saying no, he clearly understood they were not self.
Right. Hearing this, the senior monks made a massive assumption. They assumed that because he understands the logic, Khemaka must be a fully awakened, perfected being, an arahant.
But he wasn't.
No. Khemaka, leaning heavily on his walking staff because he's so sick, has to trudge over to the senior monks to explain the nuance of human psychology. He tells them that yes, he has broken the intellectual view of a permanent self. He no longer holds the philosophical belief.
Okay, bye.
However, he admits that a subtle, stubborn residue of the conceit I am still clings to his aggregates.
So the intellectual belief is gone, but the emotional reflex of the ego is still firing.
Exactly. To explain how this is possible, Khemaka uses the metaphor of the launderer's cloth. He asks the monks to imagine a deeply soiled, dirty cloth that is handed over to a professional launderer.
And in the ancient world, the cleaning agents were harsh.
Very harsh. The launderer vigorously scrubs the cloth with salt, lye, and cow dung.
Oh, wow, cow dung.
Yeah, intense stuff. Then he rinses it out thoroughly in clear running water. Visually and intellectually speaking, the dirt is entirely gone. The cloth is perfectly clean.
But the reality is much messier. Because even though the cloth is clean, it still smells overwhelmingly like cow dung and lye. The harsh scent is baked into the very fibers of the fabric. The dirt is gone, but the smell remains.
That lingering scent represents the deep-seated emotional habit of ego, the visceral feeling of I am. You can scrub away the intellectual belief in a soul using the rigorous logic of the Anatalaka Sutta, but the emotional reflex remains woven into your nervous system.
So how to get rid of the smell?
Khemaka explains that to completely eradicate the scent, the owners cannot just wash it again. They must take the clean cloth and store it in a sweet-smelling, fragrant chest for an extended period of time. Only through prolonged exposure does the residual smell finally fade away.
So storing the cloth in the fragrant chest, what is the actual mechanism for doing that in our own lives?
It represents the continual daily meditation on the rise and fall of the five aggregates. You have to keep applying the insight in real time. When you feel a burst of anger, you watch the physical form tense up. You watch the painful feeling arise. You watch the perception label the other driver as a threat. You watch the choice to yell formulate, and you watch the consciousness observe it all.
By continually observing that these are just passing processes, you slowly starve the grasping hand of its fuel.
It is a gradual cleansing. You don't condemn yourself because the cloth still smells. You just put it back in the fragrant chest and let the process work.
That reframes the entire journey. It means you aren't failing just because the illusion of self flares up when you are stressed out. It just means your cloth still has a bit of a scent to it. The goal isn't immediate perfection, it's patient observation.
Absolutely.
So, later today, when you are stuck in traffic or dealing with a stressful email, try to apply this blueprint. Remember that you aren't just one solid, angry person. You are a lump of foam gripping a steering wheel. You are a shimmering mirage projecting permanence onto a fleeting moment.
And as you observe that machinery of your mind, trying to grasp onto the frustration, it raises one final profound question for you to mull over.
What's that?
Well, if your physical body, your passing feelings, your conceptual labels, your willful choices, and even your raw consciousness itself are all just temporary illusions, just a magician's trick at a crossroads, What is it that is silently listening to this deep dive right now? Who is the one noticing the illusion?
Wow, let that sit with you today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We encourage you to watch the sleight of hand in your own mind, and remember, you don't have to fight the mirage. You just have to see through it. Until next time.